Hi guys, so I'm finally doing videos in English again today. Today I'm planning to film too. So sorry for wearing the same outfit. I'm, warning you in advance. Yes, I'm gonna be wearing the same outfit because I'm recording two videos at the same time. The same day, not really the same time. So this first video is going to be about some of my favorite books because I know that you guys really like when I talk about literature, and quite frankly I also love talking about literature with you, and I think this could be especially interesting since I'm going to share some of my favorite books with you, and I know that depending on where you're from, the books that we encounter are usually kind of different, so it's always really nice to have some recommendations from people who have had totally different literary horizons. So I'm gonna start immediately. So the first book, I'm gonna talk about something else, but at the end of the video. Okay, so the first thing is Klaus Mann's autobiography. So Klaus Mann is the son of Thomas Mann, who is a very famous German writer. He wrote A Sinful Man or Death in Venice. So yeah, pretty famous. I am starting to doubt whether this has been translated into English or not. So I'm very sorry if I recommend any book which hasn't been translated actually into English. I would hope that it has been translated, but I don't know. Anyway, so this is an autobiography which is by no means the literary genre that I usually like. I actually have read maybe like 4 or 5 autobiographies, maybe a bit more actually, and I could do a video about my favorite autobiographies, given that it's not my favorite genre. It's interesting perhaps to know which one I did find interesting. So this one is particularly interesting because it is about the life of Klaus Mann, who was born in Germany and who was growing up and becoming an adult when basically when the Nazis were starting to get to power. So he had to flee because he was, of course, someone who believed in freedom, and he was also gay. So, you better leave actually Germany at that time. So he went to the States, he went to different places, and it's a wonderful book about identity, about exile, about politics, and about creation, because he's a writer himself, and he talks a lot about writing and meeting a lot of writers like Hemingway, for example, or even Roth, and also French writers whom I'm not sure if you're familiar with, like Cocteau and Gide. It's just a wonderful book about a time of history and that we are used to learning about, but having such an insight from such a unique perspective is definitely a lot more interesting than what you can get in your history textbook. So I would highly recommend if it has been translated into English. Hopefully it has been translated into English, or if you can read in German, that would be even better, I suppose. So next I'm going to talk about Mahmoud Darwish. So I love him. He's a wonderful, he was an amazingly talented and gifted poet, a Palestinian poet who has written a lot of amazing poetry, and also he's known for his Palestinian identity and how he talked about Palestine and how he stood up for Palestine, not Palestine. So this book is actually not a collection of poems. It is some interviews translated into French. Most of them were in Arabic, and one of them was in Hebrew. It's called La Palestine comme métaphore, and I don't know if it is translated into English or not, but generally I would just suggest reading his work. His poetry is absolutely amazing. It is so interesting if you're into poetry and if you're into literature. But if you can get your hands on some of those books where he talks about creation, about his identity, his relationship to being both a poet but also someone who speaks about political issues, I would highly suggest getting the two, because both of them light up the other, and it's just a lot easier to understand and perhaps get closer to the real aims and intentions behind his poetry if you have access to also his thoughts. There are also some documentaries available online, so I would highly suggest checking them out too. But just generally anything that you can get your hands on in your favorite language, written by Mahmoud Darwish, I would absolutely recommend. It's just a wonderful author who needs to be talked about a lot more. Then Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So this one is probably not going to be a surprise for many of you. I really love this book, not necessarily because of the style, which is not my favorite kind of writing, but I love this book because it's so interesting. The subjects that are brought up in the book are just mind-blowing. It talks about the other. What do we do with this? How do we behave with this idea and those people that are others? It deals with gender studies and feminism and the voices of female authors and characters and just people in general. It's also so interesting the way it is structured, and the narrative construct is absolutely interesting too. The vegetarian question that is brought up is also, of course, very dear to my heart. I just really like this book, which in France is clearly underrated. I would assume that in the UK or even the US it is a lot more well known, and I know that the gender studies, for example, side of it is a lot more known as well, whereas in France we tend to stick to the fact that it's the first science fiction book and it's a gothic novel as well, and that's about it, which is a shame, and I try to change that. Like, I studied this book with some of my students in middle school, and we talked about feminism and vegetarianism and the other, and all the questions about creating life and the relationship that it has to do with that it has with religion and God. And yeah, they really loved it, so I'm definitely gonna stick to this book for next year's as a teacher, and I really love it. Then I want to recommend Shostika by Junichiro Tanizaki. Junichiro Tanizaki is one of my absolute favorite Japanese authors. He is so exquisite in the way he writes, and is also so perverted and just so disturbing in ways, but it's so elegant and exquisite, as I said, that it's just a delight to read, basically. This is a wonderful book that deals with lesbianism and bisexuality, and how toxic relationships can be absolutely just harmful, and even worse than harmful, and it's just wonderfully written. If you love Japanese literature, or if you love beautifully written literature which also goes into the taboo themes, I would just suggest you read anything by Junichiro Tanizaki, but Shostika is a good start, I believe. Then I have two French books that I want to talk about. The first one is A Rebours by Huysmans. I know this has been translated for sure, but what would be the translation in English? I don't know, I will put it somewhere, but it has been translated for sure. Huysmans is a wonderful author who I believe is not so well known outside of France, which is a shame, because he has written amazing works which are so different and so rich. Like he was someone who has so well educated and so knowledgeable about so many different things that it just, you can feel it when you read his books, and the style is wonderful. I personally really like this style, which is called décadentisme, I believe, décadentisme in French, so I suppose décadentisme in English, I would assume. It's just beautiful. If you love beautiful literature, if you love this end of the 19th century feel in Europe, you're gonna love this. If you love anything that has to do with mysticism and esotericism and all those different things, you're gonna love this. Everything by him is wonderfully written, at least so far. Everything I've read I found just really delightful as well to read. Sometimes a bit hard to get into because the descriptive parts are really long too, and the vocabulary is quite sometimes difficult. You might need sometimes a dictionary for the historical, the literary, or even just the vocabulary, really, references, but it's just amazing, honestly. And then Nadja by André Breton. So I made a video all in English, all about this book, so I'm gonna link it somewhere and you can really go check it out if you want, because I won't talk too much about this book because I have made a video all about it. So it's just a very unusual book. André Breton was the founder of Surrealism, and Nadja is one of the most famous books of Surrealist movement because it's just so different. It's not a novel, it's not a novella, it's not poetry, it's not only a part of Breton's life either. It's yeah, it has pictures in it, it has drawings in it, it deals with a lot of themes like madness and asylums and society and prostitution and muses and women in literature and love and all those different things. And I don't think it's a book for everyone, but if you're into unusual literature and if you're into surrealism and if you want perhaps to get to understand French literature a bit more, that would also be a very important book, because surrealism has been a very unique and big movement in the French literary history, and this is definitely a wonderful example of it. So yeah, I would suggest reading it. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. You can follow me on Instagram, which is what I wanted to say because I post a lot on Instagram. I post about literature, about daily life, about Paris, about everything. So yeah, thank you for watching this video, guys. I hope you're doing amazingly well. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye!